Have you ever wondered how a crisis that started in one country managed to shake the entire world? The 2008 financial crisis happened because, for many years, banks in the United States gave out home loans to people who could not realistically afford to pay them back. These risky loans became known as subprime mortgages. Imagine an ordinary family. A stable job, a modest dream, and one big goal: owning a home. In the early 2000s, this dream felt closer than ever. Banks in the United States were telling people, yes, you can afford this house, even when, deep down, that wasn't true. Behind the scenes, something dangerous was happening. Banks were no longer careful about who they lent money to. Loans were given to people with unstable income, heavy debt, or no savings at all. The belief was simple and reckless. If they can't pay, the house will always be worth more later. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Banks didn't just keep these risky loans. They sliced them up, packaged them together, and sold them as safe investments to other banks, pension funds, and investors across the globe. On paper, everything looked solid. In reality, the system was balancing on trust alone. Then the cracks began to show. Monthly payments went up. Families started missing bills. One missed payment became two, then thousands, then millions. Houses were taken back by banks and dumped onto the market. Suddenly, there were more homes for sale than people willing to buy them. Prices didn't just fall, they collapsed. And when housing prices collapsed, the illusion shattered. Those safe investments were suddenly worth almost nothing. Banks realized they were holding mountains of bad debt. Panic spread fast. In 2008, the moment that changed everything arrived. One of the biggest financial institutions on earth, Lehman Brothers, collapsed. Overnight, confidence vanished. If a giant like that could fall, no one felt safe. Banks stopped lending, companies couldn't pay workers, small businesses closed their doors. Ordinary people who had never heard the word subprime paid the highest price. Jobs disappeared. Retirement savings evaporated. Families lost homes they had lived in for years. Many of them were paying rent to landlords who were no longer paying mortgage. Entire countries slipped into recession. Governments were forced to step in, spending trillions just to keep the financial system alive. And here's the most unsettling part. The crisis didn't begin with ordinary people. It began with unchecked risk, blind faith in endless growth, and a system that rewarded short-term profit over long-term responsibility. When it collapsed, the consequences landed on everyone else. While most people were trying to survive, a small group was doing something very different. They were buying, quietly, aggressively, and with absolute patience. Homes that had sold for $300,000 just a few years earlier were suddenly available for half that price, sometimes less. Foreclosures flooded the market, banks were desperate to unload properties, and the average person saw only risk. But millionaires saw leverage. They understood something most people didn't. Crashes don't destroy wealth, they transfer it. At the height of the crisis, credit was tight, jobs were unstable, and confidence was gone. But the wealthy had liquidity. They had cash reserves, lines of credit arranged years earlier. And most importantly, they had emotional control. They weren't reacting. They were executing plans designed long before the collapse ever happened. The 2008 financial crisis became a global lesson written in real lives, not textbooks. A reminder that when trust replaces caution and greed replaces judgment, the cost is never abstract. It's paid in jobs, homes, and futures. And even today, long after the headlines faded, the world is still living in the shadow of that collapse. Some people say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And once again, we learn that markets have more to do with human psychology and behavior than logic. If this explanation helped you understand what really happened, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps this content reach more people who want to understand the forces shaping their lives. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.